Hey guys, hi, hello. You're gonna watch chapter 5, The Master Key to Riches, The Habits of Going Extra Mile. In the last audio session, you want to see who Arthur Nash was. And in this audio session, we are gonna see other part of chapter 5, The Habits of Going Extra Mile. So his name was Arthur Nash, he was a businessman and was a merchant tailoring. Some years ago, Mr. Nash found his business just one step ahead of his sheriff. And the world's war on the other conditions over which he seemed to have no control had brought him to brink over financial ruin. One of his most serious handicaps was that his employee had caught his spirit of defeatism, and they expressed it in their work by slowing down and becoming disgruntled. And his situation became desperate. Something had to be done, and it had to be done quickly if they were not continue in the business. Out of the sheer desperation, he called his employees together and told them the condition. While he was speaking, an idea occurred to him. He said he had been reading the story in the Golden Rule magazine, which told how the editor has going the extra mile by rendering service for which he refused to accept the pay. One day of the voluntarily reward with more than $6,000 worth of the subscription to his magazine. So he would up by the suggestion that if he had all of his employees caught by spirit and began to go extra mile, and they might save the business. He promised his business that if they would join with him and in an experiment, he would endeavor to carry on a business. So with the understanding that everyone would forget wages, forget working hours, pitch in to do this the best, and taking chances on receiving pay for work. If the business could be made to a pay, every employee would receive back wages with a bonus thrown in the good formation. So this employee liked the idea and agreed to give it a trial. So the next day, they began to come in with their messenger saving, which they voluntarily loaned to Mr. Nash. Everyone went to work with a new spirit, and the business began to show signs of new life. Very soon it was back on the paying basis, and then it began to prosper as it has never been prospered before. So 10 years later, the business had made Mr. Nash rich, and the employee were more prosperous than they had ever been, and everyone was happy. So Arthur Nash passed on, but today the business continues as one of the most successful merchant tailoring business of America. So the employee took over the business when Mr. Nash laid it down. Ask any one of them what they think of this business is going the extra mile, and you'll get the answer. Moreover, talk with one of the Nash salesmen everywhere you meet one. So wherever you meet one, observe his spirit and the enthusiasm in self-reliance. So when this is an extra mile, Simon Flynn once get into the man's mind, he became a different sort of person. The outlook on a word appears different to him, and he appears different because he is different. Here is an appropriate place to remind you on important thing about the habit of going extra mile. By doing more than one is paid for, it is the strange influence which it has to be in man who does it. The greatest benefit from the habits does not come to those who whom service is rendered. So it comes to the one who renders the service in the form of changed mental attitude, which gives him more influence with other people, more self-reliance and greater initiative, more enthusiasm, more vision and definiteness of purpose. So all of these are the qualifiers of success achievement. Do you think then you shall have the power, said Emerson. Yes, the power. What can a man do in a world without a power? But it must be the type of power which attracts other person instead of repelling them. So that must be the form of power which gains momentum from the law of increasing return, through the operation of which one's acts and deeds comes back to him greatly multiplied. You know who works for wages should learn more about this sowing and repeating business. Then you would understand why no man can go forever sowing or the seed in inadequate services and reaping the harvest of fully grown pay. So you would know that there must become of hands of the habit of demanding a full day's pay for a poor day's work. And you who do not work for wages but who wish to get more than better than things in life, let us have a word with you. Why do you not become wise and start getting you wish the easy and a sure way? Yes, there is an easy and a sure way to promote oneself into whatever he wants from life, and it becomes to know wherever every person who makes it his business to go the extra mile. So the secret can be uncovered in no matter or no other manner, for it's wrapped up in that extra mile. The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is not a mere fairy tale. The end of the extra mile is the spot where the rainbow ends, and that is where the pot of gold is hidden. Few people ever catch up with the end of the rainbow. When one gets to when he thought the rainbow ended, he finds it still far in the distance. The trouble with most of us is that we do not know how to follow rainbows. So those know the secret know that the end of the rainbow can be reached only going through extra mile. And during this banking hour, late one afternoon, some 25 years ago, William C. Durant, the founder of General Motors, walked into the bank after banking hours and asked her some favor which in ordinary course of business should have been requested during banking hours. So the man who granted the favors of Carol Downies, an under official of the bank, he not only served Mr. Durant with efficiency, but he went to the extra mile, added courtesy to the service. He made Mr. Durant feel it was a real pleasure to serve him, and the incident seemed trivial, and for itself it was a little importance. Unknown to Mr. Downies, the courtesy was destined to have repercussions of a far-reaching nature. And the next day, Mr. Durant asked Downies to come to his office, that which led to the offer of a promotion or a position which Downies accepted. So he was given a desk in the general officer, or where nearly 100 other people worked, and he was notified that office hours were from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. His salary began with a modest one, and at the end of the day, when the gong rang announcing the close of the day's work, Downies noticed that everybody grabbed his hats and coats and made a rush for the door. He sat still, waiting for others to leave the office. After they had gone, he remained at the desk, pondering in his own mind the cause of the great haste everyone had shown to gone away from the very second of quitting time. 15 minutes later, Mr. Durant opened the door of his private office, saw Downies still at his desk, and he asked Downies whether he understood that he was privileged to stop work at 5:30. "Oh yes," Downies replied. "So, but I did not wish to be run over in the rush." Then he asked he could be of any service to Mr. Durant. So he was told he might find a pencil for a motor magnet, and soon he got the pencil. He ran through the pencil sharpener and took the Mr. Durant, and Mr. Durant thanked him and said good night. So the next day, quitting time down is reminded the desk again that after the rush was over, the time was waiting with a purpose after door, and in little while Mr. Durant came out of his private office and asked against the doorways and not understand that 5:30 was the time for closing. "Yes," Dowdy smiled. "I understand it was a quitting time for the others, but I have heard no one says I have to leave the office when the day is officially closed. So I choose to remain here with the hope that I might be of some slight service to you." "What an unusual hope," Durant exclaimed. "Where did you get the idea?" "I got it from the sea. I witness here at a closing time every day," Downies replied. So Mr. Durant grunted some replies which Downies did not hear distinctly and returned to his office. So from the Downies always reminded at his desk after closing time until he saw Mr. Durant leave for the day. So he was not paid to remain overtime. No one told him it, and no one promised him anything for remaining. And as far as casual observer might know, and he was wasting his time. So several months later, Downies was called into the Mr. Durant's office and informed that he had been chosen to go out to a new plant that he had been purchased recently and supervise the installation of the plant machinery. Imagine that, a former bank official becoming a machinery expert in a few months. Without quibbling, Downies accepted the assignment and went on his way. He did not say, "Why, Mr. Durant, I know nothing about the installation of machinery." He did not say, "And that's not my job," or "I'm not paid to install machinery." No, he went to work and did what was requested to him. Moreover, he went to a job with a pleasure mental attitude. 3 months later, the job was completed. It was done so well that Mr. Durant called Downies into his office and asked him where he learned about machinery. "Oh," Downies explained, "I never learned, Mr. Durant. I merely looked around and found men who knew how to get the job done. Put them to work and they did it." "Splendid," Mr. Durant exclaimed. "There are two types of men who are valuable, and one is a fellow who can do something and do it well without complaining or that he is being overworked, and other is a fellow who can get other people to do things well without complaining. You're both types wrapped into one package." Downey thanked him for the compliments and turned to go. "Wait a moment," Durant requested. "I forgot to tell you that you are the new manager of the plant, and you have installed, and your salary to start with is $50,000 a year." So the following 10 years, the association of Mr. Durant was worth between $10 to $12 million a Carol Downs. So he became an intimate advisor of the Motor King and made himself rich as a result. The main trouble with so many of us is we see men who have arrived and we wait them in the house of their trump and without taking the trouble to find out how or why they arrived. So there are nothing very dramatic about the story of Carol Downs, and the incident mentioned occurred during the day's business, without even passing notice by the average person who worked along with the Downies, and were doubt not many of these fellow backers envied him because they believed that he had been followed or favored by the Mr. Durant. Though some sort of work were not a pull or luck, or whatever it is, the men who does not succeed used an excuse to explain their own lack of progress. Well, to be candid, Downies did have an inside pull with Mr. Durant. He created a pull on his own initiative. He created it by going an extra mile, in a matter as trivial as that of placing a neat or point on a pencil when nothing was requested except the plain pencil. He created it by remaining at a desk with a hope that might be of a service to his employee after the rush has over at 5:30 each evening. He created it by using his right personal initiative by finding men who understood how to install machinery instead of asking Durant where or how to find such man. Trace down these incidents step by step and you will find Downey's success was due solely to his own initiative. Moreover, the story consists of a series of little tasks well performed in the right mental attitude. Perhaps there were hundreds of other men working for Mr. Durant who could have done as well as Downey's. But the trouble with them was that they were searching for the end of the rainbow by running away from it in the 5:30 rush even each afternoon. So long years afterwards, the friend asked Carl Downey how he got his opportunity with Mr. Durant. Oh, he modestly replied, I just made it business to get in his way so he could see me. When he looked around wanting some little service, he called on me because I was the only one in the sight, and in time he got into the habit of calling me. There you have it. Mr. Durant got into the habit of calling the Downies more. Moreover, he found the Downies would assume responsibility going the extra mile. What a pity that all of the American people do not catch something or someone with the spirit of assuming greater responsibility. What a pity that more of us do not begin speaking more of the privileges under the American way of life and less of lack of opportunities in America. Is there a man living in America today who would seriously claim for Carol Downies and would have been better off if he had been forced by law to join the mad rush or quit his work at 5:30 in the afternoon? So if he had done so, he would have received the standard wages for the sort of work he had performed, but nothing more. Why should he have been receiving more? His destination or his destiny was in his own hands. It was wrapped up in one lone privilege, which should be privilege of every American citizen, of right of personal initiative. Go the extra mile, going extra mile. That tells the whole story. There is no other secrets to Downey's success, and he admits it that every familiar with the circumstance of his promotion from poverty to rich knows it. And there is one thing that no one can seems to know, why there are so few men who like Carl Downies and discover the power implicit in doing more than one is paid for. It has been in the seat of all great achievements, and it is the secret of noteworthy success, and yet it is so little understood that most of the people look upon it some clever trick with which employee try to get more work out of their employers. So the spirit of indifference towards the habit of going the extra mile was dramatically expressed by a wisecrack or who was applied to Henry Ford for a job. Mr. Ford questioned the man about his experience, his habits, and other routine matters, and was satisfied with the replies. Then he asked, how much money do you want for your service? The man was evasive and won his point, so Mr. Ford finally said, well, suppose you start in and show us what you can do, and we will pay you all the worth after we have tried you out. The wise guy exclaimed, and I am getting more than that where I am now employed, and we doubt not that he told the truth. So he explains precisely why so many people do not get ahead in life. They are getting more than they are worth. So where they are, and they never learn how to get ahead by becoming worth too. After the end of Spanish-American War, Elbert Hubbard wrote a story entitled A Message to Garcia. So it told briefly how President William McKinley commissioned a young soldier by the name of Rowan to carry a message from United States government to Garcia and rebel chieftains whose exact whereabouts were not known. And the young soldier took the message, made his way throughout the fastness of the Cuban jungle, finally found the Garcia and delivered the note to him. And that was all there to know the stories, just a private soldier carrying out his orders under difficulties and getting the job done without coming back with any excuses. The story fired imaginations and spread all over the world, and the simple act of man doing what he could was told and doing it well became the news of the first magnitude. And A Message to Garcia was printed in a book booklet from the sales and reached an all-time high of such publications amounting to the more than 10 million copies. And this one story made Albert Hubbard famous, and to say nothing to help to make him rich. The story was translated into several foreign languages. The Japanese government had it printed and distributed to every Japanese soldier during the Japanese-Russian War, and the Pennsylvania Railroad Company presented a copy of it to each of their thousands of employees. A big life insurance company of America presented to their salesman long after Albert Hubbard and went to an ill-fated Louisiana in 1915. A Message to Garcia continued a bestseller throughout the America. The story was popular because it had something of magical power that belongs to a man who does something and does it well. The whole world is clamoring for such men. They are needed and wanted in every walks of life. American industry has always had precisely breadth of man who can and will assume responsibilities and who can get job done in the right mental attitude by going extra mile too. So Andrew Carnegie left no fewer than 40 such men from the lowly station of the day labor of millionaires. So he understood that the value of a man who were willing to go the extra mile. Wherever he found such a man, he brought his find into the inner circle of the business and gave him an opportunity to earn all he was worth. Charles M. Schwab was one of those who gained the favor of the steam master and simple expedient of going the extra mile. He began with Carnegie and the humble capacity to stake a driver at a day wage, but step by step he climbed to the top and became Carnegie's right-hand man, and with the result that some years his income amounted more than $1 million in the forms of bonus. So people to do things or refrain or from doing that because of motive. The soundest of the motive or habit going the extra mile is a past fact that yields enduring dividends, is the way too numerous to mention to all who follow the habits. No one has ever been known to achieve permanent, has its counterpart in the laws of nature. It has at the back of it impressive array of evidence to its soundness and supplied by those who have made the practice of going extra mile. It is based on the common sense and justice. The best of all method is testing the soundness of the principle and executing it to the work as the part of one's daily habit. Some truth we can learn only through our own experience. Americans want greater individual shares of the vast resources of the country, and that is the healthier desire, and the wealth is here in abundance. But let us stop the foolish attempts to go it wrong way. Let us get wealthier by giving something to value in return for it. And this is how Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and many others of their type have been acquired for their wealth. We know the rules by which success is attained. Let us appropriate these rules and use them intelligently, and thereby acquiring the personal riches we demand and adding to it wealth of the nation as well. Some will say, I am already doing more than I am paid for, but employee is so selfish and greedy, he will not recognize the sort of service I am rendering. We all know there are greedy men and who desire more service than for the which they are willing to pay. Selfish employees are like pieces of clay in the hands of the pottery, and though they are greedy, they can be introduced or induced to rewards, and a man who renders them more services he is paid to render. So greedy employees do not wish to lose the service of one's make the habit of going extra mile. They know the value of such employees. Here then is a cowbird and the flumcum, and which the employee can be prayed loose from the greed. So any clever man will know how to use the cowbar or crowbar, and not withholding the quality or quantity of service he renders, but by increasing it. The clever salesman of his personal just service and manipulated a greedy purchaser of his service as easily as smart woman can influence a man of her choice. And the effective technique of a similar to used by the clever woman in a managing or managing a man. The clever man will make it a business to become indispensable to a greedy employee by doing the work and better for than any of the employee. Greedy employees will give their IT before parting with such a man. Thus the alleged greedy part of becomes a greater asset to the man who follows the habit of going extra mile. We have seen the techniques applied the least 100 times and the manipulated greedy employers through use of their own weakness. Not once have been seen it fail to work. On some occasions, the greedy employer failed to move as quickly as expected by the proved to be has hard luck, because the employee attracted the attention of competitive employee who made the bid of the service of the employee to secure them. There is no way to chat the man of the following or cheat the habits of going extra. So if he does not get proper recognition from any source, it comes voluntarily from some other sources. Usually when it is least expected, it always always comes to the man does more than he is paid for. The man who's go extra mile and does it the right kind of mental attitude never spends time looking for a job. He does not have to the job flow is looking for him. Depressions may come and go. Business may be good or poor. The country may be at war or at peace. But the man who renders more services and better services and than he is paid for become indispensable to someone and thereby insures himself against the unemployment. High wages and indispensabilities are twin sisters. They always have been, always will be. And the man who is smart enough to make himself indispensable, the smart enough to keep himself continuously employed, are the wages which not even the most greedy labor leader would ask for. Henry Ford understood the value of indispensability. He always knew for the value of going extra mile. That was why 30 years ago he voluntarily raised the wages of the workers to an all-time high minimum daily wages. By the act he did for the employee something no one forced him to do, and it was a wise move because his insurance him against the labor trouble for more than a quarter of a century. Andrew Carnegie understood the value of going the extra mile. By putting the rules to the work, he piled up the fortune of more than $500 million. By some he accused by being greedy, but he was never accused by being weak in the management of men. If he were greedy, but he were wise in his deficiency by paying some of his men. So those who had bad or good judgment to make themselves indispensable to going extra mile, as much as $1 million a year bonus. His policy was encourage men to become indispensable to him by doing more than they are paid. A privilege that was work available for the humblest worker and them ensuring himself against the becoming his rival in the business by paying them all or more than they were actually worth. We do not know what others may think of these principles of doing more than one is paid for, but as for ourselves, we may prefer to go along as such man as Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, and emulated instead of criticizing them. So by their recognition of the principles of going extra mile, these two men added the millions of dollars of additional worth to the nation, provided profitable employment to many millions of men, and piled up huge fortune of their own use. Who among us could have been done better? Who among us have better plan than theirs? No, most of us do not have a smarter way Henry Ford and Carnegie. Instead of emulating their examples and making it a business to go extra mile, most of us paid when asked to do something for which we are not being paid. Display our brand's wisdom by saying, I am not paid to do that. So thus do we brand ourselves for what we are. Time, the great entrepreneur or interpreters, which stands on the side of lines of life, and the brands out of worth are forthrights pulled for and across the foreheads of the as much as merchant, while the Henry Ford and the Andrew Carnegie steps out of the line, settles his price tag on themselves. So they find their fellowship man ready to pay and any price they demand for their services. Most men spend their lives searching for the breaks, waiting for the opportunities to overtake them, depending upon luck to provide them with their needs, but never come within sight of their goal because they have no definite goal. Therefore, they have no motive to inspire them from the habit of going extra mile. They never recognize the worldly hope man set their hearts upon turns ashes, or its purposes on almond, and like snow upon the desert's dusty face, lighting a little heart or two is gone. Their haste has become waste, and for they go round and round like a goldfish in a bowl. Round and round they go in like a goldfish in a bowl, coming back always place where they were started, coming back empty-handed and disappointed. Riches may be attained by appointment only, but the choice of definite goal and the definite plans for attaining it, also by the selection of the definite starting point from which they to take off. But let not make the mistakes of assuming that habits of going extra mile pays off only in the terms of material riches. The habit definitely helps one to tap the source of spiritual riches and draw upon the source of every human need. The consequences of going extra mile is not only that the personally worthwhile, but you can tell from the previously story the profits of one business as well as in fact going extra mile makes perfect business sense. And let me share with you another example of what I mean by this concept. And thus end this audio session, and soon in the next audio session we said chapter 5, how to own our gesture of loyalty touched an entire nation, or going an extra mile makes a good business sense, and revealing the story of Edward Childs. And so many stories like this are waiting for. Meet you soon in the next audio.